Back on the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast, Laramie Sandquist. He is Senior AVP of Risk Management with Nationwide Agribusiness, talking about severe weather that brings a host of potential challenges for farmers. Of course, Laramie, you know, here in Ohio, warmer weather brings a greater possibility of strong storms, tornadoes, hail, floods. The time for severe weather preparation on your farm is now. But what does that entail? That's what we're going to cover here today with Laramie. Good to see you and welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ty. I appreciate it.
So we're talking about preparedness for emergency situations, especially during severe weather. What does a plan look like on the farm as far as being ready for situations like I talked about earlier?
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about severe weather, that's obviously changed over the last 5 years of what that could look like. Obviously, we always remember the hail, we always remember the tornadoes, but now we've got a lot of these severe convective storms, as they're called in the business, and just these heavy straight line winds that are coming through, and really trying to manage through all of this stuff. And it seems like the Midwest here is takes the brunt of it as we go through. But it has changed our outlook on it. It has changed the way that we prepare for these things, and it has changed the way that we prep everything that we have from our facilities to our emergency action plans to our equipment and really how we're managing the whole farm risk from that perspective.
You mentioned the emergency plans. What are the basic elements of an emergency plan when it comes to the farm?
Yeah, it's first and foremost, it's taking a look at everything that you have there, you know, everything that you have from a structural standpoint, everything you have from a equipment standpoint, and then just an operational standpoint and saying, all right, how are we prepared if disaster strikes? I always tell people, hey, if you were to wake up in the morning or come in the aftermath of a tornado and say, there's nothing here, where do you start? And so it starts with knowing your operations, knowing your facility, but then it's like knowing your cleanup and knowing how to rehab and get back up and running as quickly as possible. When you talk with our claims folks, first and foremost, our main job after the event of a tragic tornado or things like that is to get folks back up and running as quickly as possible. So what are those key operations that we have to focus on first? And how do we manage that ahead of time so that we have the right suppliers, that we have the right manufacturers lined up, that we have the right cleanup crews lined up, whatever it entails for your individual operation.
Seems after these major storms blow through that compared to commercial or residential buildings that farm buildings often get the most damage. Why would that be?
Yeah, historically, you know, we looked at surveys across the country, work with different companies to give us information about building codes and what kind of structures are up to code. And only about 30% of the country is really held to building codes. And you look in the ag community, the rural community, there's not a lot of codes that are out there. So sometimes the structural integrity from previous generations hasn't been as strong as some of the codes now that are up and running today. And some of the buildings that were built just aren't there to withstand 80 to 120 mile an hour straight line winds anymore. And so there's some of that where it's just historically we haven't seen events like this in the past. And so looking at your individual structures themselves to say, okay, if I do get that 80 mile an hour wind, how susceptible am I? If I do get that 100 mile an hour wind, how susceptible am I to it? I think we all know a tornado is going to probably be pretty devastating wherever it goes through. But I think what most folks are looking at is these strong hail events where you're getting this golf ball to even baseball size hail, and then also these strong straight line wind events. These are the ones that are taking people off guard that they really haven't prepared for in the past.
So, what are the keys as we get to building more weather resilient farm structures? What do they look like?
Yeah, as you look at just the building itself, making sure that the roof is reinforced, making sure that the walls are reinforced, making sure that the actual structure of the building itself, if there's needed reinforcement there, making sure it's all tied together. What we say is like a lot of times, you know, as you're building a commercial structure, a lot of the commercial contractors are building it to a code. And we've asked a lot of our farm customers the same thing is as you're building your structures or reinforcing your structures, you don't have to follow the code verbatim, but how is that code different from the way you currently have your building structured? And is there an opportunity for reinforcement based off of what you currently have? So we know there is a lack of code that's out there, but or at least code enforcement in various areas. But if we can get to a certain standard, that's obviously going to be better for everyone as a whole.
We're seeing more severe weather. We're seeing that severe weather even earlier in the year and later in the year, and that gives even greater value to the relationship that farmers should have with their insurance agent. What would a communication look like between a farmer and their agent before God forbid a tragedy happens and after that storm rolls through?
Yeah, that relationship, obviously, with your agent and making sure that you have a plan in place ahead of time is so key. Because after the fact, we know it's chaotic. We know that you want to fall back on something that's concrete, something that you can just pick up out of the remnants of what you have left, hopefully electronic, so you can just access it via, some type of mobile device or something that's saved out there to say, here's what I want this to look like. But we did do a survey of farmers here recently, and we'll put that data out later this year. But some of the main takeaways from that is 80% of those folks have experienced adverse weather events to the tune of about $250,000 in damages on average. And most of those folks, 65% of them, didn't have a plan in place as to what to do after the fact. And so at that point, it is really relying on the agent relationship and then also your carrier and your claims professionals on, hey, who do I contact and how do I get back up and running as quickly as possible? And I think I mentioned that earlier on is that, your main goal once the disaster strikes is to be ready as quickly as you can get back up and running, because that lapse in time to mobilize contractors and mobilize demolition crews and mobilize alternative ways to get your product to market or whatever it happens to be, that time is money. And so the better we can prepare on the front end for when that disaster strikes, hopefully decreases that time of restoration. We call it the period of restoration on the back end, so that you just back up and running as quickly as possible.
A lot of great resources online. Where can someone watching or listening find information about preparing farms for severe weather?
Yeah, as you look out at our Ag Insight Center, nationwide.com/AIC. We've got a ton of good articles out there, a lot of different checklists and things that people can use from that perspective. So trying to keep people up to speed with what's out there and also really just framing that mindset of preparation is key to being back up and running as quickly as possible on the back end.
Great information helping us be prepared for what we know is going to be some severe weather here over the next few months across Ohio and really across the Midwest. Laramie Sandquist is Senior AVP with Nationwide Agribusiness. Always great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ty.
No matter what generation farmer you are, the next one is always the most important. The Ohio Soybean Council is focused on the future of your operation. It's not just a checkoff contribution. It's an investment you can count on for your farm, your bottom line, and your future. Ohio Soybean Council. Invested in your future.
At Ag Credit, our loan officers take the time to understand each operation, its needs, and offer the unique financing solutions it deserves. Whether your needs include financing for equipment, livestock, inputs, farm improvements, real estate, or your home, we've got you covered. With a company vision to inspire growth in agriculture and our rural communities, our team members aren't just lenders. They take an active role in their community and are advocates for agriculture. To apply online or find the location nearest you, visit us at agcredit.net. Ag Credit, committed to agriculture, committed to you.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ty Higgins. When the State House is bustling, our policy team is hustling. I think that needs to be on the back of a t-shirt, Evan Calicote. What do you think?
I would agree. I'd like that t-shirt. I'd buy it.
Evan joins us on the podcast. He is Director of State Policy with Ohio Farm Bureau. Really, it's silly season for you. We're getting into budgets and a whole lot of other topics at the State House that you and our members are testifying on. And I want to just kind of cover everything happening at the state level as we get closer to the end of budget season and getting a lot of these issues buttoned up at the State House policy-wise. And at the forefront is that biennial budget. Every 2 years, we go over a bunch of line items to fund for the next couple of years. And one of the things that sticks out for me as far as what we're talking about is H2 Ohio. This is a program that was started back in 2019 by Governor DeWine and really has carried on through Northwest Ohio to the entire state. But early prospects for H2 Ohio looks like there could be some major cuts to the program. What are you seeing and hearing about there?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we did see around a 45% cut for H2 Ohio across all of the agencies that it impacts. That would be the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Ohio EPA, and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. All three of those agencies do different things with H2 Ohio, but all of them received around a 44-45% cut. Overall, it's about $120 million. So our message so far has been to the legislature that we have made so much progress and so much momentum in this space, not only in the Western Lake Erie Basin, but across the state. This program really went statewide after the last budget, and we just think we're at kind of a pivot point where if there's things that are working, we want to keep doing those. If there's things that aren't working, let's find something new that is going to work. So we're definitely spreading that message that this is not the time. We really, really do have to drill into this, and we think this is a great, great program for our members, and we'll hopefully get those numbers back up.
Yeah, on the water quality front, we have seen a decline of dissolved reactive phosphorus feeding into the Western Lake Erie Basin and eventually Lake Erie because of the practices and the ways that H2 Ohio, helping farmers in Northwest Ohio implement better and more nutrient management and water quality practices. And if you see a 45% decrease in that budget, you're going to see likely fewer results that we've been seeing over the past 5 years to that program. So important to keep those funds at the levels that we have been seeing. What else in the budget? I know that we often talk about things that happen at OSU and the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences as far as some lines in this budget. What are we watching there?
Yeah, so OSU Extension 4-H in Ohio is funded through the operating budget, as well as OARDC, which is the research center up in Worcester. So both of those line items in the budget, not as much of a haircut as H2 Ohio, is only about a 3% cut, but that is still critical dollars. We really do view 4-H and Extension as our biggest recruiting for our next generation of our workforce, and also our easiest way to communicate with the public about what's going on in agriculture. So definitely support those, and we'd like to see those plus back up to those fiscal year 25 numbers.
Seems like we always talk about property rights, eminent domain. Anything on that vein in the budget this year?
Yeah, so there was actually a provision that was inserted in the House process that was a provision in our eminent domain bill that we've been pushing for the last couple GAs. Specifically, it would prohibit eminent domain being used for recreational trails. It would not classify them as a public use. We've heard from many of our members that these unelected park districts are able to take their private property and they're not able to hold them accountable. So we are very glad that this provision was in there, just giving, again, our members stronger private property rights wherever we can find it.
What else are we watching in the budget? There are some things that maybe are unorthodox that get thrown into this bill every once in a while.
We were very supportive of the House inserting a provision that had $250 million for brownfield remediation. This is a program that Farm Bureau has supported for many years that helps locate new businesses, energy projects, housing, what have you, on the places that are brownfields, that are they have all of that existing infrastructure. They just need maybe some chemical or some environmental cleanup. All of those dollars are helping those projects not go onto green farmland. So this has been something that we are very glad the legislature has invested hundreds of millions of dollars, and we are very glad that they inserted this into the budget in the House.
So those are the things in the budget, and there are many things outside of the budget that you're keeping an eye on as well. And one of those is something that I find myself talking more about every once in a while, and that's foreign ownership. And we've heard about it at the federal level. Now we're talking about it at the state level. What does that bill entail?
Yeah, so House Bill 1, sponsored by Roy Klopfenstein and Angie King, it's been around for a couple of general assemblies now. It's really trying to strengthen our foreign ownership law to make sure that those foreign adversaries that are on the foreign adversary list at the federal level, that they're not able to own property in this state. This is a bill that we have long supported. We want to make sure that we're protecting our members' land from whatever threats there may be.
Yeah, speaking of protecting land, annexation, a part of the conversation as well in one of these bills. What does that entail?
Yes, so I testified along with some of our other field staff, and also a couple Farm Bureau members came and testified last week on House Bill 113 dealing with annexation. Specifically, this bill will help tighten up Type 2 annexation, which is an expedited form that, at least in our opinion, does not have enough input from the public and the community that may affect. So we were very happy to see some Farm Bureau members come up and testify. This bill was actually introduced because they raised the issue to their representative before he was even elected. And now that he is elected, he introduced this bill. So it was a really good, I think, example of our grassroots process really playing out. It may not be the most high-profile bill, but often those aren't the ones that affect our members the most. So we were very, very glad to get that, and we hope to see that bill pass here soon.
Something for the youth in Ohio agriculture as well. We just had the state FFA convention about 2 weeks ago, and of course, Ohio, the birthplace of 4-H. What are we talking about as far as those programs here in a new bill as well?
Well, as a proud Clark County, and I will never forget that A.B. Graham founded 4-H in Clark County. But yesterday, I got the opportunity to testify on House Bill 125, which would grant excused absences for 4-H and FFA events. And again, this is another bill that's been around for a GA or two that we've supported. We really just want to make sure that we are offering students the opportunities to try to find out what they want to do in their career. That's the purpose of 4-H and FFA. They're great career tech opportunities. And I even had the privilege of having my ag teacher bring a student up to testify. So we had a great moment there getting to show how this benefits not only me as a former career tech kid. I wouldn't be on this podcast with you if it was not for an organization like that. So it was just a great bill. Really hope to see that pass soon as well.
Saving the best for last. This is a real heavy lift as far as Ohio Farm Bureau is concerned, something that came from our policy and from our members, and that is creating health plans through Farm Bureau. That's something that needs to be done through policy, and there are a couple of bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, talking about Farm Bureau health plans. Kind of give us a rundown of what we're asking and how the process is going so far.
Yeah. So what we're asking for is to be able to offer individualized health coverage for our members that makes sense for them. We have definitely identified that health insurance is often a barrier to entry and sometimes a barrier to staying in agriculture. You have to make sure that you have that health insurance for your family. And sometimes in our industry, the normal way to get health insurance just doesn't make sense. So this health coverage will be able to really fill that need for our members. And specifically, that would be Senate Bill 100 and House Bill 99. Senate Bill 100 has already passed the Senate unanimously, so we're very grateful to the senators for their vote on that. Both of those bills are currently sitting in the House Insurance Committee, and we hope to have hearings on them soon and get this bill done as fast as we can to fill this critical need for our members.
Before I let you go, talk about how important it is for our members to have their voices heard. I know we had an action alert about a couple of these go out as we get ready for the major aspects of all of these bills getting passed through the State House. What is the ask of our members as far as just making sure that they put their 2 cents in?
Yes, it is critical. I'd like to think that all of our public policy staff here are great at their jobs, but we are nothing without the strength of our grassroots membership. So please, if you are talking to any of your legislators or seen them at community events, I highly encourage you to just tell them your story. You don't need to advocate for all of these specific things that we are doing at the State House. That's our job. Your job as our members is to tell your story. And if you would like to contact your representative to tell them their story or talk about those bills, I will not stop you. I encourage you to talk to them about these things going on. But it's just so important that these legislators understand agriculture. There's the smallest number of farmers that we've had in the legislature, at least to date. So really making sure that these people know the position of agriculture and whatever the issue may be. And just hearing our story is always going to be important.
The State House is bustling, so Evan Calicote is hustling. He's Director of State Policy with the Ohio Farm Bureau. Great to see you. A lot of work going on behind the scenes and a chance to really bring it all to the forefront for our members to see what we're doing day in and day out and doing it all on their behalf. So thanks, Evan.
Thank you, Ty.
As the nation's #1 insurer of farms and farm families, Nationwide has long been a reliable resource for rural America. And while the current surge of data, technology, and globalization promises incredible growth potential, each new opportunity is shadowed by rising threats like security breaches, GMO contamination, and supply chain failures. This business is about adapting. It demands a protector just as forward-minded. It demands Nationwide.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcast.